The smell of rosemary and butter filled the kitchen, warm and comforting, the kind of scent that should have belonged to a home filled with laughter. But the Blake dining room was never warm. It was polished, sterile, quiet in the way that made silence feel like accusation. Aria moved through the kitchen like she'd lived there her whole life, though she had never once been welcomed as someone who belonged. Her hands worked automatically, chopping, stirring, checking the roast in the oven, all while her mind drifted somewhere far from the clatter of silver and glass. She was a ghost long before the world learned how to see through her. Nathan's mother entered first, heels clicking against marble, perfume sharp enough to sting. She set her handbag on the counter Aria had just cleaned and made a disapproving sound under her breath. Not words, just dismissal, as if Aria had already done something wrong simply by existing in her line of sight. "Careful not to overcook the roast," she said, though she didn't look at Aria when she spoke. "Nathan prefers it medium rare. If it's dry again, I'll just remind him that you were not raised to know better." Her voice floated like silk dipped in vinegar. Aria nodded, not because she agreed, but because anything else was pointless. Nathan's father and sister arrived. Next, carrying on a conversation that did not require Aria's presence, though she stood inches from them. They talked about vacations, business dinners, new cars, lives full of choices and voices and space to speak freely. Aria placed plates on the dining table in silence, hands steady, eyes down. She had learned long ago that silence was safer than trying to fit her words into their world. The room shifted when Nathan finally walked in. He didn't greet her, didn't touch her, didn't look at her the way he used to before the Blake name became a cage she willingly walked into. He simply took his seat, phone in hand, scrolling with quiet intensity, as if nothing and no one else existed. Her heart didn't break anymore when he ignored her. Hearts only shatter once. After that, they learn how to go quiet. Dinner passed in the same predictable rhythm. Nathan's mother criticized the seasoning. His father questioned her ambition. His sister asked with a small smile whether Aria had ever thought about improving herself, like becoming more presentable, more polished, more worthy. Nathan never defended her. He didn't have to. His indifference did the work for him. When the table was finally cleared and the house quieted, Aria retreated to the bathroom, shutting the door quietly so the sound wouldn't disturb the people who barely knew she existed. She turned on the light. It flickered once before settling into a harsh, white glow. She looked in the mirror, and for a moment she didn't recognize who stared back. Her face looked thinner, paler, not from illness, but from a life spent trying to be small enough to fit inside someone else's world. Her eyes had lost their brightness. Her shoulders curved inward, like she had been folding herself away piece by piece, just to keep the peace. She touched the glass with her fingertips, as if she could reach through and shake the woman inside awake. When was the last time she had laughed freely? When was the last time someone had looked at her and seen her, not her usefulness, not her silence, her? She blinked slowly, her breath catching in her chest, shallow and soft. The realization hit with quiet violence. She was still alive, but she had stopped living. Her voice, if she still had one, whispered inside her chest, so faint it barely made sound. "This is not who you were meant to be." She exhaled, but it didn't feel like air. It felt like a memory of breathing. Aria woke the next morning with a heaviness in her chest that felt familiar but sharper now, as if her body had finally realized what her heart had been trying to say for months. She moved quietly around the kitchen, preparing coffee for Nathan, because that was what she always did. But something felt off, a quiet shift beneath her ribs, like a string pulled loose from a seam. Nathan entered in a hurry, adjusting his tie without looking at her. He grabbed the coffee mug from the counter without a word and started scrolling through his messages. His brows drew together in irritation. Someone must have texted something he didn't. Because he sighed loudly as though the world personally offended him by existing. "I'm leaving early," he said, still not looking at her meeting with investors and dinner afterward. "Don't wait up." He noticed nothing, the softness she once held. In her eyes gone, the quiet ask for love gone even. The hope that used to cling to her voice when she said his name had vanished. She just nodded, her body moving with a careful sort of stillness so he wouldn't notice she was breaking. She didn't want him to see that he no longer had enough power to shatter her completely. When the door closed behind him, the silence felt different, not like suffocation, but like possibility, a breath she had not been allowed to take in years. She wandered into the living room and saw the framed pictures on the shelves, all of Nathan, all of his accomplishments, his life, his pride, his world. There was only one picture of them together, and even in that photo, his smile was real, only for the camera, his eyes. Cold. Even then, her eyes were shining in that picture, hopeful, full of a love he never deserved. She sat on the sofa, clutching the edge of a pillow, her heartbeat too loud in her ears. She didn't cry. She thought she would cry, but there were no tears. Left grief had burned to ash, and ash did not fall, it floated. Her phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. She almost didn't open it, but something about it felt important. "Miss Collins. This is the administrative office from Hale Restoration Group. We are reaching out regarding your inquiry from 6 months ago. We would like to schedule an interview if you are still interested." Her heart stopped. She hadn't applied for anything. She hadn't in years. She remembered now she once sent designs to a restoration firm late at night when Nathan had fallen asleep beside her without a single goodnight kiss. She had been so proud of the designs she made them, with love, with passion, with the dream she used to carry in her chest. Like warm sunlight, she had forgotten she ever wanted that life. She had forgotten she was still allowed to want, but someone had seen it. Someone had kept her application. Someone had remembered her name. She stared at the message for a long time, afraid to hope, afraid to breathe. But hope came anyway, a small flicker, a spark she couldn't smother no matter how she tried. "Yes." She typed, her fingers trembling. "I am interested." They replied instantly, as if they had been waiting for her. "You have been approved for an in-person consultation today at 3 p.m. Our lead director specifically requested to meet you. We believe you will be a strong fit for our upcoming preservation project." Her pulse quickened. Someone requested her. Someone saw value in work she had done in secret, in quiet, in loneliness. She looked around the home she had built, around a man who never looked back at her, and she finally understood. She had been begging for scraps in a place where love was never going to be served. She stood slowly walking to the mirror in the hallway, and she saw herself again, the version she thought had died, the version who dreamed, who created, who loved. Not for permission, but because her heart was generous and full. She whispered to her reflection, "I remember you." She changed clothes. She tied her hair back. She picked up her portfolio, the one she had hidden at the back of her closet behind Nathan's tailored suits, and she walked out the door. For the first time in years, she was not running from anything. She was walking toward herself. Aria arrived at the building just before 3, the city wind brushing against her skin, like a reminder that she was no longer living inside someone else's shadow. The restoration firm's headquarters stood tall and glass-fronted, elegant without, shouting for attention. Like confidence worn quietly, she swallowed hard before stepping inside, wondering if she belonged in a place like this anymore. The lobby receptionist greeted her warmly, and within minutes she was being led down a hallway, lined with framed blueprints and photographs of restored landmarks, each project marked by care and patience and artistry. She felt her heart tug, because this was the world she once dreamed of shaping before love had become a chain around her throat. Stopped outside a large office with open windows, where sunlight poured in like blessings. Waiting, the receptionist knocked once, and Aria stepped inside. The man behind the desk looked up slowly, as though he had already known she was there before. She walked in his eyes, not cold, not assessing, but clear, steady, the kind of gaze that did not try to own her, just understand her. Liam Hale. She recognized the name from articles, profiles of the self-made millionaire who rebuilt forgotten structures around the city, breathing life back into what others threw away, and something about that resonated inside her like an echo of her own story. He stood and offered his hand. No rush, no force, just welcome. Aria Collins, thank you for coming. She nodded, unsure whether she trusted her voice not to break. I reviewed your designs, he said gently, and something softened in his expression. They were extraordinary, not because they were perfect, but because they were alive. They had soul. Most architecture now is about efficiency and profit, but yours held memory and intention. No one had ever spoken to her work like that before. Not even Nathan, who only ever said things like that is nice, I suppose. Or are you still playing with that? She felt something tremble inside her like a thaw beginning in winter. I am curious, Liam continued. You submitted these 6 months ago, and yet there is no employment history, no recent projects. It is as if you disappeared. The question hung in the air, heavy with truth. Aria opened her mouth, but her voice came out faint. I was with someone who preferred I keep my life small, that I stay where I was needed. Liam's jaw tightened, only slightly. His voice did not change, but the warmth inside it deepened. And you believed him? I did, yes, she whispered, but not anymore. Good. His response was immediate. Not praise, not pity, recognition. She felt seen in a way she had not in years. He gestured for her to sit and showed her the project plans, a historical theatre in the oldest part of the city, abandoned, decayed, forgotten. He asked her what she saw in the broken structure, and she spoke before she could overthink. I see what it used to be, but also what it could become, not restoring it to its past, but restoring it to its purpose, a place where people feel like they belong, like their stories matter. Silence settled between them, not awkward but full. He nodded, once certain and absolute. I want you on this project. Aria, not as an assistant, not as a trainee, but as lead restoration. Designer, if you will accept. Her breath caught the room, seemed to tilt the world too. But why? She asked honestly, because Nathan had convinced her she was ordinary, replaceable, forgettable. Liam's voice was quiet but firm. Because I see you. Because your work deserves to exist in the world. And because you are the kind of person who builds, not destroys. And that is rare. The words hit harder than any insult ever had, because they were the truth she had been starving for. She felt her eyes burn, not from sadness, but from remembering what hope felt like after forgetting it for so long. I accept, she said, and her voice did not shake. This time, it was steady, strong, her own. As she walked out of the building, portfolio in hand, the sky seemed brighter. The street sounded different, alive, with possibilities she thought she had lost forever. But across the city, Nathan sat in his office, scrolling through social media, when a tagged photo appeared of Aria, walking out of Hale Restoration Group, smiling. For the first time in years, something ugly twisted inside him, something possessive, something cold. And when his jaw clenched, the room around him seemed to darken. He had let her go, but he had never expected her to rise, and he was not done with her. Yet Aria stepped onto the old theatre site the next morning, the building rising before her, like a forgotten cathedral. Massive, silent, wounded sunlight leaked through broken windows, painting dust and memory into the air. The city had abandoned this place years ago, but something in its cracked foundation felt familiar to her, like a heart that had once been full of music, but had learned to go quiet after being ignored. Too long. Liam stood near the entrance, clipboard in hand, speaking with contractors. But when he saw her, his expression softened the way the ocean softens when the tide comes in. Not dramatic, just certain welcome. He walked toward her slowly, as though giving her time to choose the moment herself. You came, he said simply, and Aria realized no one had spoken those two words to her without expectation or demand. In years, she nodded, the air thick with dust and possibility. He handed her a pair of gloves, and the faint ghost of a smile tugged at his mouth, ready to get your hands. Dirty. She didn't answer with words. She stepped forward and pushed open the heavy rusted door. Everything inside was shadowed rows of seats collapsed under weight of time, walls dulled with soot, stage curtains torn like a wound. But beneath it all, there was a pulse, something waiting to be revived. She felt it as surely as she felt her own heartbeat. Liam watched her quietly, not interfering, not guiding him, simply letting her see, and in that silence she felt something unfamiliar, safety, not the fragile kind dependent on approval, but the strong kind that grows from choice, from respect, from being allowed to exist without shrinking. She walked the length of the theatre, her fingers trailing over the wooden banister worn smooth by thousands of hands. She could almost hear the echoes of applause, laughter, music, breaths held through stories shared in the dark. She saw not what was here, but what could be, a place healed, a place reborn. Liam approached her slowly. "What do you see?" he asked, not testing her, truly wanting to know. "I see a heart," she said, "that forgot how to beat, but not how to remember, how to try again, how to hope again, how to open." The words did not feel like they came from her, but from something long buried, rising finally into light. Liam's eyes held hers a long moment, something passing between them, something quiet but undeniable, respect, admiration, a beginning. They spent hours examining the structure, marking beams to preserve, sketching plans on paper smeared with pencil dust and determination. And for the first time in years, Aria laughed. It was soft and surprised, like she didn't recognize the sound as her own. Liam looked up at the sound, as though he had heard something rare and precious. And when she met his gaze, her laughter faltered into something warmer, deeper, real. But across town, another scene was unfolding. Nathan sat in his sleek office, staring at the image someone had just sent him. Aria laughing, sunlight catching the edge of her hair. Surrounded by people treating her as an equal, not a shadow, not a possession. His jaw tensed, his fingers curled into a fist. He had expected her to fall apart, to come crawling back, to realize she had no one but him. What he had never imagined was that she would rise without him, that someone else would look at her the way he never had, that someone could see value in the parts of her he had worked so hard to convince her were worthless. He stood abruptly, knocking over his chair. His mind no longer calm, no longer strategic. Something sharp and territorial flaring inside him. She was his, he told himself, even if he had thrown her away, even if he was the one who shattered her. People like her didn't leave, people like him, they didn't rebuild without him, they didn't learn, they never learned. But she had, and that terrified him. He picked up his phone, his voice low. "Cold call. In a favor. I want everything on Hale Restoration Group, who runs it, who funds it, and I want to know exactly who Aria Collins thinks she is now." Back at the theatre, Aria stood on the stage, the late afternoon light turning the dust into gold. Liam stood below, watching her quietly, as though afraid to break the moment. "How does it feel?" he asked softly. Aria closed, her eyes breathing in the scent of wood and old velvet and sunlight. "It feels like I can breathe again." But the city was already shifting around them, and Aria did not yet know that sometimes when a woman rises, the man who tried to break her does not let go. He hunts, he waits, he returns. And this time she would not be the one who bows. This time she would be the one who stands. The following week unfolded like a slow awakening. The theatre came alive with the rhythm of tools and voices, workers moving through sunlight and shadow, restoring beams that once carried stories. Aria felt the same transformation stirring inside. Piece by piece she was rebuilding too. Every nail hammered into place echoed something in her chest, repairing what had been broken for years. Liam walked beside her through the site, not as a boss, but as a partner. He asked for her opinion, listened to her suggestions, and when she spoke he didn't interrupt, he didn't correct, he only listened. That simple act of respect felt more powerful than any love she had ever been offered before. During a lunch break, they sat on the steps outside the Bay Theatre sharing sandwiches from a nearby cafe. The air smelled of rain and dust. Aria found herself watching Liam's hands, strong, steady, scarred with the kind of stories men don't tell easily. He caught her gaze and smiled the kind of smile that didn't demand anything from her. "You're quiet today," he said. She looked away, just thinking, it's strange to be happy again. I almost forgot how it felt. "Maybe happiness isn't something you forget," he said gently. "Maybe it's something that hides until you're ready to see it again." Their eyes met for a moment, and something unspoken moved between them, something that made her heart beat faster, but also calmer, like it had finally found a rhythm it could trust. Later that day, Liam asked her to review a section of the design proposal. She stayed late after everyone left the theatre, her pencil gliding across the blueprint, when she noticed a figure standing by the stage shadows, swallowing his outline. Her pulse jumped until he stepped into the light. Nathan. Her breath froze. He looked different, sharper, colder, but his smirk was the same cruel familiar. "You've been busy," he said, his voice smooth like oil dripping on glass. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "You didn't answer my calls," he said. "I thought you might need a reminder of who helped you become who you are." Her stomach turned, the old fear clawing at her chest, but she stood her ground. This was not the woman who used to flinch at his tone. "I became who I am because I survived you," she said quietly. "Now leave." He laughed low and mean, his eyes scanning the theatre. "You think this place will save you? You think that man will protect you? He's just another one who will get bored once he's had his fill." Liam's voice cut through the air before Aria could speak. "I think that's enough." Nathan turned his head slowly. Liam stood at the back of the theatre, calm but unyielding. His presence filled the room like a quiet storm. He walked forward, his tone even, but his eyes warning, "Leave before you regret it." Nathan's jaw tightened. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "You're right," Liam said. "But she does, and she's still not afraid of you. That should tell you something." For the first time, Nathan faltered. Just slightly, the confidence cracking around the edges. He sneered once more. But this time, when he left, the echo of his footsteps didn't sound powerful. They sounded hollow. Aria stood shaking slightly. Liam came closer, not touching her, but close. Enough that she could feel his steadiness grounding her. "You're safe now," he said softly. She nodded, but her heart still raced because she knew Nathan wouldn't stop. He wasn't the kind of man who accepted losing control, and deep down she sensed something darker behind his visit, something calculated. As the night deepened, rain began to fall outside. Soft at first, then harder, drumming against the roof like a warning. Aria looked up at the old chandelier swaying slightly above them and whispered, almost to herself, "He's not gone." Liam met her eyes. "Then no," he said, "but neither are you." In that moment, surrounded by thunder and unfinished walls, she realized she was no longer running from her past. She was preparing to face it, and this time she would not face it alone. Rain lingered for 2 days, as if the sky itself was watching, waiting. The city felt heavy with it, the theatre windows fogged with condensation, trapping the scent of wood dust and newly mixed plaster inside. Aria arrived early every morning before the crew. She needed the stillness, the way some people needed air. She stood center stage, staring up at the chandelier that swayed the night Nathan appeared. The memory of his voice echoed, but something else echoed louder. Now her own. She had not walked away this time. She had not bowed. She had stood and been unbroken. That truth pulsed beneath her skin like a new heartbeat. Liam entered quietly from the back doors, his footsteps familiar. She didn't have to look to know it was him. He always moved as if refusing to disturb whatever she was feeling. "You're here early?" he said, his voice warm like morning light even when the sky was grey. "I needed space to think," she answered. He stood beside her, not asking what she was thinking about, not insisting she speak. That simple patience made her throat ache with a softness she wasn't ready to name. "We'll increase security around the site," he said casually but with intention. No fear, no dramatics, just protection offered, not imposed. "That's not why I'm here," Aria said. "I don't want to live trying to avoid him. I want to move forward." Not away. Liam's eyes held hers steady. "Good, then we move forward." They spent the morning reviewing updated architectural assessments. Aria was brilliant. Without needing to perform brilliant, her vision shaped every discussion, not through force but clarity. She didn't notice the way workers began asking her before asking anyone else. She didn't see how her name had begun traveling through conversations. With respect, she only knew she was working, breathing, living. It wasn't until mid-afternoon that tension returned. One of the contractors jogged in, holding a sealed envelope. "Someone just delivered this for you." Aria's hands stilled. The air shifted. Liam watched her without moving. She opened the envelope. Inside was a single crisp photograph, her laughing, standing in front of the theater steps, sunlight in her hair captured from a distance. On the back, a message written in handwriting she once recognized. "As home, come back before I take back what I gave you." Aria's breath left her body too fast. Her pulse hammered in her ears. The world narrowed. Her past had not just followed her here, it was circling her, watching, waiting. Liam stepped closer, his voice quiet. "Read it to me." She handed him the photograph, her fingers trembling. He read the message, his jaw tightened. The calm in his face was gone, replaced by something sharp, controlled but dangerous. "He thinks he owns you." Liam said, "Not a question. He always did." Aria whispered. Liam looked at her then, not with pity, not with outrage, but with a fierce, unwavering certainty. "Aria, I need you to understand something clearly. If you walk away now, I will not stop you. The choice will always be yours, but if you stay, I will stand with you, and I do not lose battles when I choose to fight them." Her throat tightened. Heat rose behind her eyes. Not fear, not helplessness. Something stronger burning through her chest. "I don't want to run anymore," she said, and the truth of it rang like a bell. "Good," because he continued, leaning in slightly. "You are not something that can be taken back. You are not something that belongs to him. You belong to yourself." The world held still around them. Dust, suspended, lights humming. Distant construction sounds fading. For the first time since leaving Nathan, Aria did not feel like she was reclaiming something she lost. She felt like she was claiming something entirely new, her life, her voice, her future. Liam turned toward the entrance, where the city waited outside, full of storms, both past and coming, and said then, "Let's begin." But neither of them knew that Nathan was not acting alone. Someone else had joined him. Someone who knew this theater. Someone who had been watching the restoration plans closely. Someone who needed this project to fail. And they were already inside the story, waiting for the next move. The city lights flickered through the tall windows. As evening settled around the theater, the restoration crew had gone home, leaving the building quiet except for the faint hum of electricity and the whisper of dust drifting in the air. Aria stayed, behind, reviewing structural notes, her focus sharp but her nerves restless, her mind returning again and again to the photograph, the message, the warning. She had thought Nathan was a shadow she had left behind, but now she understood. Shadows do not disappear when you walk away. They follow until you turn to face them. Liam was in his office down the hall, finishing paperwork. They worked in silence, comfortable distance, connected by presence rather than words. But then the lights flickered once, twice, and the building went dark. The sudden silence was heavy, thick, the kind that did not feel like accident. Aria's pulse jumped. Liam stepped out of his office, flashlight already in hand. Generator should have kicked in. He said, "Something is wrong. Stay close." They moved together through the dark theater, their footsteps echoing louder than the air around them. Aria kept her breath slow, reminding herself she was not the woman who broke. She was not the woman who begged. She was not the woman who stayed silent in the dark. They reached the control room. Liam checked the breaker panel. Everything was in place, untouched. That's when they heard it, a faint sound, like metal scraping on concrete, coming from the far end of the stage. Not footsteps, not tools. Something dragged. Liam motioned for Aria to stay behind him, but she shook her head. This was her project, her fight, and they walked together toward the stage, the flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Near the back door, something glinted. On the floor, a crowbar, and beside it, a toolbox. They did not recognize someone had been here, someone who knew how to break things quietly, someone who left before being seen. But there was more taped to the stage floor, was another photograph, this. One of the theatre itself before restoration, but scribbled across it in black marker were the words, "You're rebuilding something that should stay broken." Aria's stomach dropped, not just Nathan. Someone else was involved, someone who didn't want. The theatre restored someone with reason, someone who wanted to destroy her work before it began. Liam studied the writing. His jaw clenched. This isn't just him, he has help. Aria's voice was steady, even though her hands trembled. Someone who knows. The building, someone who didn't want it saved. Liam nodded slowly, his eyes sharp, calculating. There are developers who profit from demolition. Someone wants this land cleared. If this restoration succeeds, they lose everything. Aria stepped closer to the vandalized photograph. And for the first time since this battle began, she wasn't afraid, she was furious, a quiet, slow, burning fury that strengthened the bones rather than shattered them. "They think I will break," she said softly, "but I already did once, and I learned how to rebuild myself. They can't take that from me now." Liam looked at her then, with something deeper than admiration. It was recognition. She was not fragile. She was fire that had learned to burn silently long before anyone. "Saw the smoke. We fight smart," he said. "We gather proof, we stay ahead of them, and we do not back down." Aria nodded, but she stopped speaking because she felt something. Then, not fear but awareness, as if the theatre itself was listening, as if the walls held stories of battles fought before her, as if the building knew her now and stood with her. They walked out into the cool night air, and as Aria locked the entrance, she noticed a car parked across the street windows, tinted engine running. No one stepped out, no one drove away, the car simply watched. The message was clear, the past was not finished, the threat was not hiding. It was waiting, but so was she, and this time she was no longer alone. The next morning the air felt different, heavy, with something unsaid. The kind of weight that follows you before you know you are being followed. Aria didn't sleep much, but when she woke, she did not wake afraid. She woke alert, aware, steady. She, dressed in quiet confidence, pulled her hair back, tied her laces tight, and walked out of her apartment as though the city itself had opened a path for her. When she arrived at the theatre, Liam was already there, but not alone. A woman stood beside him, dark hair, sharp eyes, a posture that told the world she did not bend easily. She introduced herself with a simple nod. "Detective Mara Patel." Liam called her in not to save Aria, but to support her. A difference Aria felt instantly. "We have reason to believe the person targeting the theatre is not acting alone," Mara said calmly, her voice clear. "Someone with access, someone who knows when the building is occupied and when it's empty, someone who has been watching for a long time." Aria's heart tightened, not from fear, but recognition. She knew someone else had been watching her before Nathan showed himself, someone who moved like silence, someone who knew how to wait. She thought back to the photograph taken from across the street. The timing, the angle, whoever took it had been there. Close, Mara studied her face. "What aren't you saying?" Aria hesitated, then spoke. "There was a man who worked with Nathan, a friend of his. Lucas Hale, they handled property acquisitions together. Quiet, ambitious. Someone who studied value, not people. Someone who could look at a skyline and decide which buildings deserved to stay and which deserved to fall." Liam's head turned slowly. Lucas Hale. The name tasted like cold steel. The air shifted between them, a realization forming silent but sharp. Lucas and Liam shared the same last name, but not the same world half-brother. Liam said, voice low, different fathers, same mother. Lucas always wanted control. He never cared about restoration, only profit areas. Pulse quickened. All the shadows made sense now, the sabotage, the quiet watching, the threat written across her life. Lucas wanted the land, Nathan wanted Aria. Both men believed they were owed what they desired. Both believed taking was the same as deserving. Mara exhaled. This is no longer personal, it's strategic. Your rising threatens his leverage. Your success ruins his project, bids your existence, disrupts his control. Aria felt something lift inside her. It was not fear, it was clarity. She had never chosen this war, but she would choose how to fight in it. They reviewed plans, increased site supervision, reassigned key supply vendors. But Liam stayed close, not because she needed protection, but because he refused to let her stand alone late. Afternoon, Aria climbed the scaffolding to examine the upper balcony, light streaming through the broken glass, making the dust sparkle below. On the main floor, Liam discussed structural reinforcement with the crew from above. Aria watched him. His steadiness grounding her breath, settling in rhythm with his presence. Then a noise echoed from the back entrance. Harsh, hurried, the crew turned. Someone stepped inside, dressed in grey work clothes, hood, low cap, pulled down face, shadowed moving like. He knew exactly where to go. Straight toward the electrical panel. Aria shouted Liam's name, but her voice disappeared into the high ceiling. The figure reached the panel and pulled something metallic from his pocket. The lights flickered, alarms. Silent, this sabotage was planned, designed to look like accidental failure. Aria didn't think she moved hands, gripping the railing. She climbed down, fast boots hitting metal rungs, heart pounding. She reached the stage as Liam turned toward her, but the figure bolted toward the side exit. Aria didn't stop. She ran after him, the hallway narrow, the air stale, the man's footsteps echoing ahead of hers. Outside, the alley was drenched in afternoon heat. The figure sprinted toward a waiting car. Window rolled down enough for another face to be seen for a fraction of a heartbeat. Nathan, watching, smiling, not with love, with possession. The car sped away, leaving dust rising in its wake. Aria stopped in the middle of the alley, chest rising and falling, not from fear, but from the realization that this was no longer just a threat. This was a declaration of war, but for the first time in her life, when the world tried to break her, she did not shatter. She turned. She walked back to the theater where Liam stood, waiting, eyes searching her face silently, asking if she was still her. She met his gaze without trembling. "I don't want to be protected," she said. "I want to finish what I started." Liam nodded once, a vow forming between them. "Then we finish it together." Night settled over the city, heavy and silver, the kind of darkness that feels like it is breathing against your skin. The theater glowed softly from within scaffolding, casting long shadows like ribs around a beating heart. Aria stood center stage. Plans unrolled before her, but her hands were still her mind, turning faster than the world around her. The attack earlier had not shaken her. It had awakened something, a clarity that felt like fire in her bloodstream for years. She had moved small, spoken small, loved small, all to fit into a space someone else created for her. But now the space was gone, and she realized she did not need it. She could build her own. Liam entered quietly, the way he always did, not to interrupt, but to join. He did not speak immediately. He studied her face, searching for fear, but finding steel instead. His voice was low, steady. "You are not carrying this alone." Aria turned to him, not with gratitude, but with certainty. "I know, but I am not hiding behind anyone either. I will not disappear to make him feel strong again." Liam stepped closer, close enough for warmth to cross the distance, but he did not reach for her. He never made choices for her. He only stood where she asked him to stand. This is not just about the theater anymore, he said. This is about taking back your life, your voice, your name. She met his eyes, and for the first time, her heart did not tremble. It expanded. Before they could speak further, Detective Mara entered from the side aisle. Urgency in her step. She held her phone out. They found surveillance footage from a parking garage not far from the theater. A man in a hooded jacket entering Lucas Hale's office late last night, and Nathan leaving minutes later. No words exchanged, only a brief hand on the shoulder, a silent agreement. A shared plan. It was never just one or the other. It was both Nathan's obsession, Lucas's greed. Two men who believed Aria was something to own, and the theater something to break, if they could not control it. Mara's voice sharpened. If they fail to destroy the building from the outside, they will try from inside. They will try to discredit you, to come for your name, your reputation, your work. Aria felt her pulse slow. Not race. She was no longer reacting. She was deciding. They want to take what they think I built to impress them, she said, but I built this to remember myself, and I will not let them take that. Liam studied her profile, the strength in the angle of her jaw, the calm in her breath. He had seen strong people before, but this was different. Aria did not harden to survive. She softened into power. She did not build walls. She built foundations. The following day, the theater was full. Reporters, city council members, donors, people whispering. About the attack, news had spread faster than fear, and eyes watched Aria from every corner, waiting to see if she would stand or collapse. Nathan arrived first, polished, composed, smiling, with the confidence of a man who believed the world still bowed. For him, he approached Aria slow, as if she were prey, returning to him at last. Lucas stood just behind him, hands in pockets. Expression. Flat, calculating. Aria did not step back. Nathan spoke her name like he owned it. Aria, this project has become dangerous. Let us manage it. Let us save you. You do not have to embarrass yourself pretending you can handle this alone. A hush fell around them. No one breathed. Liam took one step forward, but Aria lifted her hand, not to stop him, but to choose her moment. Her voice was soft but carried through the entire theater, like a chord struck on an old piano. I am not alone, she said, and I am not yours. And I never was. Nathan's smile cracked just slightly. Lucas shifted weight, annoyance flickering in his eyes, but Aria continued, her gaze unwavering. You do not get to return to a life you walked out of and expect it to bow at your feet. You do not get to break something and expect it to stay broken. The room held silence like a held breath. Aria turned to the council members, to the workers, to the city itself, and spoke with the quiet force of truth. I am restoring this theater because it deserves to be seen again, and I am restoring myself for the same reason. The world shifted in that moment, small but permanent, like stone settling into place. Nathan's voice came out cold. You think you've won? Aria's answer was calm. I did not come to win. I came to live, and you cannot take life from someone who has already reclaimed it. Liam stepped to her side. Not in front of her, not behind, beside. The battle was no longer a question. It was already decided, and the final move was coming. The morning of the grand reopening arrived with sunlight that felt like a promise. The theater was transformed, walls restored, seats reupholstered, chandeliers glowing like constellations reborn. The building breathed again, not as something returning to its past, but as something claiming a future. Aria walked the aisle slowly, fingertips brushing the velvet armrests, her heart steady her steps. Sure, this place had once been a ruin, and so had she, but both had been rebuilt, beam by beam, breath by breath. People began to arrive, city officials, donors, artists pressed, the murmurs of awe rippling through the space like wind through leaves. But Aria stood apart for a moment, grounding herself. She had earned this, she had chosen this, she had stayed. When it felt impossible, she had not broken. She had rebuilt. Liam approached from behind his presence, familiar and quiet. "You ready?" he asked, not pushing, not leading, walking beside her as always. She nodded, and they took the stage together. Applause rose warm like summer rain. She looked out at the crowd, but her voice did not tremble. This theatre stood silent for many years. She began her voice carrying through the hall. People believed it was too damaged to save, that it was easier to tear it down and replace it with something new. But buildings, like people, are not disposable. They carry history, memory, heart, and when given care and patience and belief, they can rise again. The crowd listened, every breath held. But my favorite part, something in her voice softened, is that this theatre did not return to what it used to be. It became something new, something stronger. Restoration is not going back, it is going forward. Applause swelled like waves. Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with fullness. She stepped back to let Liam speak, but he didn't. Instead, he turned to the audience, his voice clear. "I must correct something everyone has said." He said, "They keep calling this my project, my success. It is not this. Theatre is here today because of Aria Collins." The room stilled, heads turned, eyes widened. Aria froze, breath caught. Liam continued. "She saw life here before anyone else. She saw possibility where others saw ruin. She did not restore this building, she resurrected it. And she gave it back to us." The applause that followed was different, deeper, not polite, not expected, earned. But the moment was not done. At the back of the theatre, Nathan stood, Lucas beside him, both frozen, as if the world had shifted beneath their feet. Nathan's expression was disbelief. No, not disbelief. Something worse, realization. He could no longer touch her, control her, define her. She was gone from his orbit, and he was small now, painfully small. Lucas's jaw clenched, calculating futures. Collapsing profit, disappearing control, slipping dust through his fingers. They had lost. Aria lifted her chin and met their eyes across the distance. No fear, no anger, only release. She was not proving anything to them. She was simply finished with. And then Nathan took one step forward, but stopped, something in him finally breaking. Not her, not Liam, him. The man who believed control was love had nothing left to hold. Aria turned away, not out of dismissal, but out of peace. The ribbon was cut, lights rose, the theatre filled with music again, laughter echoing like bells against velvet. She walked out into the lobby, the city evening glowing through the glass. Liam followed, but not to claim, only to join. Outside on the steps, she finally let the air settle inside her lungs, fully, like she had been learning how to breathe all over again. Liam stepped closer, voice low, so only she would hear. "Not saved," he said, "just seen." Aria looked up into his eyes, the kind of gaze that did not demand that, did not own that, simply honored. "I am myself again," she whispered. Liam's smile was slow, warm, real good. "Then let's live from here." The city stretched out before them, lights glittering like 1,000 open doors, the theatre behind them glowing. Like a heart beating bright, Aria took a breath, deep, steady, free. For the first time in her life, she was not surviving. She was living, and love was not a cage. It was a choice. She now had the strength to make. Her past did not disappear. It simply no longer defined her, and her future began with her.